Destined Ascension, S tier. DA, or Destined Ascension, is one of the few Craftwars-like fan games that I've made many videos on my channel. This game is definitely one of the best Craftwars games when it comes to quality, arguably surpassing balanced Craftwars overhauls. The game can be increasingly more demanding as you progress in the game, however, which I would say the growth in the amount of work needed to reach the next tier starts around, say, main game mid game, which is around admin tier, I believe. But I wouldn't say it's enough to drive people away from finishing the main game. As for people who like tremendously grindy games, DA does offer secrets and events that the player can grind for in order to become even stronger. Sure, the amount of effort, or sometimes luck in some cases, needed to achieve those goals can be ridiculous to the average gamer, but keep in mind that they're only optional and not required to progress onto future tiers when they release. Destined Oblivion, B tier. Destined Oblivion is a fan game based off of Destined Ascension and your average Craftwars fan game, which is definitely inferior to Destined Ascension in terms of gameplay and quality, but I don't think it's that bad. It's okay in terms of quality, though the amount of grinding required to progress from one tier to another can become increasingly dull the further you get into the game. Give it a try if you want, though you'll likely get bored after reaching mid-game, unless you have a pro to get you extremely powerful weapons early on, or certain endgame materials such as I think it's Chaosal. The debate about demoting this game's ranked to C tier, but I guess the game isn't that bad since you can upgrade from one tier to another relatively fast if you know what you're doing at the very least. Draconic Craftwars, C tier. Draconic Craftwars is a mediocre Craftwars game overall. It seems meh in visuals. I mean, the game is extremely grindy. Even I had to buy a freaking Biome Summoner panel game pass just to maintain my sanity. And even with that, it still took me a long time to reach the end game. I mean, it's tolerable early game, but after that, it's gonna take a really long time just to gather materials since you have to keep selling the same biome over and over. But, I don't think it's that bad overall. I mean, it's definitely a lot better than your average Craftwars fan game copy. So, I decided to put it at C tier instead of D tier, since it can be at least somewhat entertaining for, I'd say, a good old 30 minutes, even without any game passes. But if you want to try it out for yourself, then go ahead. Dumb Craftwars, C tier. Honestly, I've only played Dumb Craftwars for the summer event. I didn't even bother touching the main game progression because I couldn't be bothered to progress normally, especially since I don't even know where to start or what I had to do to get to the next step. Aside from the confusing progression, the gameplay, at least in terms of the summer event, was pretty meh. I mean, 85% of the time I spent in that game was mainly just me AFK grinding for summer coins that I used to purchase stronger weapons for the summer event shop. But I guess it'll be a little unfair if I just judge the game based off the limited time event alone. That's literally all I only did in that game, since that was the only thing I could really grind for clearly, and the main game progression didn't really stick out that much to me. Eggnog Craftwars, A tier. Eggnog Craftwars is another Craftwars game that I've posted at least a few videos about on my channel. Overall, the game feels polished from start to end, though I also think that the game faces the same balancing and RNG problems that balanced Craftwars Overhaul exhibits. Fortunately, the amount of grinding required to progress through the game isn't as bad as balanced Craftwars Overhaul, so you're not going to have to literally spend days grinding for biomes and cores, unless you're generally very unlucky. But other than that, I think the game is pretty neat, and yeah. Eternal Craftwars, Broken. If I remember correctly, Eternal Craftwars was one of the very few Craftwars games that actually blew up for a certain period of time. However, the game was then subtly shut down and privated for a very long time, which I believe it was a few years? Not sure. Well, after that, it became available to the public once again, and at that time it was available, I was already occupied with grinding BCWO, and I wasn't too interested in exploring other Craftwars games at the time, so I didn't really experience the game while it was still out, and at speed, I guess. And as of now, the mines are bugged, so I'm not sure if progression is entirely impossible, but I highly doubt it is, since you need ore to craft certain stuff. So, yeah. And Eternal Craftwars isn't actively being maintained. It was mainly only released because it was for nostalgic purposes, so I don't think I can really judge this game fairly. Well, I did play a little on my alt, so you can see that in the gameplay footage in the background. But yeah, if you want to try it and see how it was, like people played it a lot, then give it a try. Glacial Craftwars, C2. Glacial Craftwars is an old, simple Craftwars game that is surprisingly still available to play on Roblox, despite being discontinued for a long time now. It doesn't really feature anything crazy in today's standards, since obviously it's an old game, but I would say that the game is interesting enough to check out for at least 2 or 3 hours, maybe. The grind does become much more repetitive and exhausting the further you get into the game, however, and it definitely won't be able to compete with most Craftwars games nowadays due to how simple the graphics simply are in this game, so can't really expect much once you get into the later parts of the game. God Craftwars, B tier. God Craftwars is probably the silliest Craftwars games I ever played on Roblox. I mean, the entire game is just meant to be completely satirical, which I like, as it takes a different and unique approach to your average Craftwars fan game. It's designed to be unserious, yet I actually found the game to be a little fun. Sure, the gameplay loop can get boring for the main game, since it mainly consists of just, getting melee weapons and the AFK grinding biomes to get enough materials to get to the next tier. But the progression isn't that slow at all, at least not until you reach endgame, which I believe is Chaos tier or something. Anyways, I think the game is worth checking out if you're just looking for a wacky Craftwars game to goof around in. Immortal Craftwars, Requiem. Broken. So, Immortal Craftwars Requiem was one of the more interesting Craftwars game that I had in mind, and I was going to review this game until I booted up the game and my screen literally froze after killing the first enemy there. Now, I'm pretty sure the game is still somewhat playable and still being worked on, so this could just be a bug that the devs somehow overlooked, or it could just be a performance issue on my end, but I literally cannot play this game because of this, so I'll have to put this game in a broken category. Original Craftwars RPG, C tier. OCW RPG, or Original Craftwars RPG, I'm pretty sure is what it stands for, is essentially the Walmart version of Craftwars Reimagined. Sure, the game currently offers much more content in terms of progression, but the amount of grinding you have to do just to get from one tier to another is painful past early game. Early game gameplay can be quite intriguing, as players will most likely be focused on exploring biomes, portals, etc., including crafting the Bladeworks accessory. But the gameplay can become very redundant past early game, as you're going to be forced to spend hours farming for materials, which usually consists of either waiting for rare biomes to appear, which can take hours for the right biome, mining a stupid amount of ores, or killing the same boss over and over until you get a specific material drop. Overall, I think the players will find the game to be a lot more enjoyable if the recipes were heavily reduced past mid-game, and if the players had another way of obtaining these materials without having to wait hours for a specific biome to show up. Original Destined Ascension, C tier. I'm not sure why I decided to play and rank this game, but I guess it'll be a great comparison between the legacy and the current state of DA. The legacy version of DA was definitely a lot more tedious and boring than the Destined Ascension we all know today, as weapons were relatively a lot weaker since 1, they didn't really have any interesting abilities, and 2, the enemies were just a lot more tankier than they were supposed to be. So yeah, it would usually take a really long time to kill enemies, which will obviously affect the amount of time it takes to get to the next tier. The graphic quality of original Destined Ascension is a lot more simpler and janky compared to the DA we all know, but I think you'll probably enjoy exploring the events and the old maps of what Destined Ascension used to be for at least 30 minutes of playing the game, if you decide not to focus at the progression. Pathetic Craftwars. Prime Craftwars, A tier. Prime Craftwars just feels like a more refined version of original Craftwars RPG, though it is considered a grindy Craftwars game still, at least for me, but I don't think the progression of the game is too slow until you at least reach the end game, like the Realm of the Champions. It may take you some time to get from one tier to another, but at least the gameplay is way more engaging than the majority of Craftwars fan games, unless you're grinding a lot for certain materials. It is also a lot more visually appealing, especially towards the later parts of the game, so I think it's worth the grind if you have a strong level of commitment. Premortial Craftwars Beta, B tier. Premortial Craftwars Beta is a decent Craftwars game overall. I mean, it doesn't seem that crazy when it comes to graphics, but I think the style of the game is pleasant and nice. Gameplay is alright, though I think the combat portion of the game can be a little janky occasionally, though I'll overlook it. As for the progression of the game, however, I think Premortial Craftwars requires some work on the balancing, especially since some items just seem too weak despite their extreme recipes. The same issue applies for the reverse sometimes as well, as it often feels like there's just a sudden spike as to how much you need to do in order to obtain a certain item to move on to the next tier. The game has the potential to become a great Craftwars game, though the grinding definitely needs to be heavily reduced, as it often can be very mundane and lengthy depending on what items you do have. However, this game was also just recently made public, so I believe the extreme crafting recipes and the damage values for all the weapons are just simply prototypes, and will probably be fixed given a month or two. Recraftwars, A tier. This game was one of the few Craftwars games that I also enjoyed playing. I mean, the amount of grinding that you do have to do in Recraftwars compared to the other Craftwars fan games is relatively light. And the gameplay is actually quite engaging, in which you really have to wait for certain biomes, though if it does happen, then it usually doesn't take that long for the biome that you need to appear. The visuals are decent enough to not appear that janky, so I don't really have any other problems with this game aside from the fact that the game doesn't really have too much to offer, so you'll probably finish the game in a day or two if you're counting rare items and optional craftables. If Zone does continue to work on this game though, then I might consider bumping up this game up to S tier once I have a lot more content to offer. Reforged Craftwars, D tier. This game is literally the personification of all grind and no fun. I honestly don't even know why I decided to invest in this game for such a long time. So Reforged Craftwars 2 better be a whole lot better than this one. Or else. Retro Craftwars Reworked, C tier. Retro Craftwars Reworked is essentially just bad Craftwars and a modded version of the average Craftwars fan game combined into a single game, whatever that means. Although it does contain more original content than your average Craftwars fan game copy, it still faces the same problems that bad Craftwars has in terms of gameplay and progression. Sigma Craftwars, C tier. Sigma Craftwars is basically the average Craftwars copy infused with brain rot. I mean, without an outside source of information, probably going to be stuck, just like me, as to how you're supposed to progress through the game, since everything is literally rebranded with brain rot. As for the gameplay, all you can really do is just wait and pray that the right biome appears and gets you enough materials to craft something. And also hope that that item is also as strong as you think it is. I'm assuming this game is already meant to be a joke, so I'll just leave it at C tier. Unnamed RPG, S tier. Unnamed RPG is one of the Craftwars-like games that I've made a couple videos on my channel. It may not look as impressive as the other S tier Craftwars games, but the gameplay aspect of an Unnamed RPG is just simply perfect. And the game itself can get a tad bit grindy, but I wouldn't say it's bad enough to be classified as a major issue. Regardless of what the stage of the game the player is at, there's always something for the player to do. And most of the time, the player wouldn't have to like AFK grind for stuff. Most of the grinding is mainly just like mining and stuff. Other than that, I think you're actually going to enjoy this game if you haven't played it already. Craftwars 2, D tier. Craftwars 2 is a sequel to Craftwars made by Knacker, which is vastly different from the first game in all aspects. However, it has long been discontinued and no longer worked upon, which means parts of the game is broken and the game itself is actually mostly silent. At first glance, the game might seem interesting enough to look into since it's, well, obviously not like the other Craftwars copies, but you'll probably soon realize that the game itself doesn't really have that much content to offer when it comes to gameplay, and it can quickly become boring really fast, especially since nobody plays this game that much. Craftwars Ascended Dimensions, Broken. This was the most recent Craftwars games that I've played before I started working on the tier list, so I was actually kind of invested in this game at first, till I decided to craft 100 scrap metals after AFK grinding for a little bit, and now my entire inventory is bugged. I've tried deleting all the scrap metals in my inventory, and still couldn't craft anything in the end, so I'm not sure if it's like an issue on my end, or if this is just a bug that happens when you craft too many items. And I'm not sure if it ever be resolved, as Endeavor the game claimed that the game was already discontinued. So I guess I have to leave this game in a broken category until it's resolved, or it'll probably be stuck in there forever. Craftwars Infinity, B tier. Craftwars Infinity is one of the Craftwars games that I've tested out recently before making this tier list as well. I mean, after checking it out for a few hours, I thought the game wasn't actually as bad as I expected. It doesn't really follow the main tier progression that most Craftwars fan games do, and the grinding isn't too bad at all. I mean, sure, it kind of relies on RNG a little for certain biomes to spawn, but you really only need like one of those biomes to craft all the items that you're only going to need. And it could just potentially be placeholder values, but as of now, the game is alright overall. It has potential to become a good Craftwars game if it was developed more, so you'll see how it ends up in the future. Balanced Craftwars Overhaul 2, D tier. Balanced Craftwars Overhaul 2 is a little fever dream. The entire game is hella confusing, and I was generally lost as to what I had to do 80% of the time I spent playing that game, with the other 20% me just killing this Prime Radiant boss or whatever. I could tell that a little bit of effort was actually put into making the game somewhat unique, but the entire game just feels more of like just some brain rot joke rather than an actual Craftwars game. Galaxy Craftwars, D tier. Based on appearance alone, Galaxy Craftwars may seem a little different from the other Craftwars games at first, but it's actually just really a reskinned version of classic retro Craftwars. Speaking of which, that game's coming up next. Progression mainly consists of waiting for biomes just to kill enemies that drop specific materials, and usually you are going to need a large quantity of those materials in order to upgrade to the next tier, which can get very repetitive and annoying really quickly. Furthermore, the game also seems to have an issue with data, as my data just randomly resets at one instance, and that's when I decided to just call it quits there. Although the workload isn't as bad as some Craftwars games, it can definitely drive people away from the game since it mainly just consists of AFK grinding for biomes to appear randomly. Classic Retro Craftwars, D tier. 95% of the gameplay is literally just AFK grinding for biomes. Literally almost all the weapons do the same thing depending on their class type, with the difference only being the color of the weapons and the DPS. The game is just not worth it, man. Galactic Craftwars. Anyways, that's all of the Craftwars games ranked. It's possible that I might make a part 2 of this video if I do end up reviewing a lot more Craftwars games this year. So technically not everything in this tier list is final, at least for the year of 2026. But for now, this is all I have for today's video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all later. And don't forget to join the Discord server.